Hello everyone, this is Diane and I will be your host for a demo entitled Designer Labels. This demo will demonstrate how to add a new series, how to modify existing series, and just how to move things around on a label so that it meets your needs. So to get started, we'll press Setup, Designer Labels. The first page that you come to is just a page of where you tell the program the page setup. How many rows, how many columns, if there's any type of a margin on the left or any offset on the on the top. You just set up that information from this screen. To add a new series, all you need to do is press the Add button. At that point, it puts in the word New, and of course you'll want to change that word New, so you'll highlight it and just type in whatever the new series may be. So we'll just call this Diane's Label. So now we have Diane's label, but as you can see from this screen, there are no setups at the moment. So if I go over to the designer page, you'll see that this label is very, very tiny. The reason is because I have not set up any of the page information. So if this page looks like a series that I have saved as a default, there is one set of these series, just like we've shown before in pressure files and specifications. You can save one set of specs as a standard. Well, that's the same thing in your designer labels. You can select any one of the existing series and save it as a default series. So by doing so, then when you create new ones, if it works on the same page information, then all I need to do is reset this to the default setup, which means whichever series I saved as a default now will appear. If I select that button, I will have the same setup that I have for a label series that I saved as a default. What is the page watermark? A page watermark will print a light background gray color of the page number on each and every page, and of course that is very useful if you drop your stack of labels, and this will help you put them back together. Landscape, you just select whether or not you want to print in landscape view, whether or not you want to draw a label border around the label, and whether or not you want to use job color in specifications wherever you've asked for a job color as a background. So now what we'll do is we'll go on over to the Designer tab, and now you'll see that I actually have a label size. It actually looks a little bit more normal. So again, I can start off with a default, or I can actually just start creating a label from scratch. But I want to go the lazy way, and I'm going to reset to default label. So at this point, this label is going to appear and look just like whatever label series I saved as a default. At this point now is when I can make any kind of changes that I want to. When you're looking at the label itself, you can see that you'll see a lot of ABCs and different numbering, and you don't know what those pertain to. So all you need to do is highlight any one of the items on a label, and on the left hand side it will actually show you what that pertains to. So by just highlighting any one of the items on a label, it will actually then on the left hand side show you what that corresponds to. And in reverse, if I wanted to select from the left hand side, then it will make where if that item exists, it will turn that item green on the screen as well. So you can do it either way. So we'll select a comment, and you can see that that's my comment. So you can see the differences between what information is each one of those items pertain to. Another thing that you'll need to know is the Enable button. Enable means I want this on my label or I don't want this on my label. So for instance, if I were to print the date long, I want the date long instead of the date short, then what I need to do is enable that field. If I have, let's say, a floor, and you can see here that there's no green highlighted, and also the Enable button is not enabled. So if I want to enable that, all I need to do is check the Enable box. If I want to remove an item from this label, all I need to do is highlight the field that I want to remove and then just uncheck Enable. So let's go ahead and put a floor back on here. So we're going to enable that. When you enable an item, it will come up in the top left-hand corner of the screen and it will be quite small. Once you get the double arrows over, then you can actually move that. Now there's several ways to change the size of that item. I can get my arrow left and right and enlarge it, or I can also get it up and down and also make it higher. So you can just grab the item and do whatever it is that you need to do for that item, or you can also just go to the properties page and tell it the width and the height of that label, of that item. So let's just say I'm going to make this 0.25 and I'm going to make this about 1.25, and I say OK, and now when we look back at that field, it will be a different size. So you can actually do it in two places: either use the arrows by clicking on the item, enlarge it or shorten it, heighten it, whatever you need to do there. We go back to the properties page and go over a few things here. Use description. If I have use description checked, then whatever is in the description box is what will appear on the label to the left of the item. So I will also get FLR : and then if I have a floor number, it will actually print that floor as well. You can select a particular color by just using job color, select the little ellipse, and at that point pick any one of the colors that you want as a background color for whenever you're using a floor. You can change the font. You can change the size of the font. So if you don't want a particular font or you want something else, just select that from this screen. If you don't want any color, you just select the no background color. And if you'd like a border around the item, you can actually say draw border. So for instance, when we look at the download number and we go back to its properties page, you'll see that it actually has draw border around it with no background color. So if I wanted to pick a color when I was using the download number, I'll just go ahead and pick a different color here, and we'll say orange, and we'll say OK and OK, and when we get back to the screen, you'll see that the download number will actually have an orange background with a border around it. Now, since I am working on, of course you want to save your changes if they're correct, so you'll select yes. Because I'm working on the new label, Diane's label that I just created, and then we went to the designer page, remember at this point all I have set up so far was just the metal. If I select liner, again it will have no information on that screen. Same thing with a sheet label. Same thing with an accessory. So each and every one of these items have to be set up so that it will actually know when you're getting to an accessory label or a sheet label or an ID label what information to print. Again, for each one of these I can select Reset to Default. Maybe it was just the metal that I wanted to modify and no other label. So all I need to do is Reset to Default on each and every one of the different types of labels. So we'll just go ahead and do that on each and every one of these. Now if you want to add a company logo, for example, let's say we've got the Lockformer company logo here and you want to add a company logo of your own. What you do is you go to the properties page. At that point you have a little box here that's asking you where does that bitmap, where does your company logo bitmap reside. You'll just use the little ellipse button and you will browse to wherever that bitmap is that you've created on your computer. And I'll just say that I'm going to use a VS2 icon or bitmap and say OK, and now that Lockformer 1 will now be the Vulkan 6 bitmap. So that's how you add a company logo. You will select it. If it's not enabled it, you will enable it. Go to the Properties page, select the ellipse, and place and locate that bitmap for your company and say OK. Of course, when you're done, you want to save changes. ID, same thing with an ID label. It also has a company logo. So if I wanted to add my new logo to that, I just select it and select the bitmap, say OK, and now I have the new bitmap located on my ID label. Going back to the setup screen, again, remember to save your settings. You can also reset to Vulkan Standard. If you reset to Vulkan Standard, you will be resetting to a standard that we originally came out with, how the program was sent to you originally. Reset to default setup, again, you can save any one of these series as a default. So if you want to set Diane's label up as your new series, then all I would need to do is say save as default series. Well, let's go back to a job, let's say, and look at the download number. Let's go to a job here. And we'll have to modify that job to pick the standard label that I was actually using. Say OK. And when I go to Sheet Review and display a label, you'll see that on the download number it will have an orange background with a border around it. And it also has the floor and first floor. So again, if I wanted to remove the description in front of first floor, all I would need to do is go back to the designer page, Setup, Designer Labels, Diane's Label, Designer, and select the floor, Properties, and uncheck Use Description. Say OK. And let's pick Use This Color. We'll say OK. We'll save our changes, go back to Vulkan and Fittings, and we'll go back to that same job. And now we will review a label again. And I have the word floor, the description, FLR, is removed, and I also have a background color. So that's how you make changes to the designer labels. You can either, again, recapping this, you can add new series, or you can manipulate existing series just by selecting any existing series, go to the designer page, and at that point set up and make changes to any one of these label types. When you're done, you just press Save Changes, and then you can exit. And that concludes